It's almost football season, boys. Here we are, almost getting into college football and the NFL. So, we're going to start a new series here at Youngspeak Sports where we're going to have a podcast each week talking about just the NFL. So, this week we're going to start out talking about the AFC East and the AFC North. So, each of these podcasts, we're going to focus on two different divisions in the NFL leading up to week one. We're only 4 to 5 weeks away, so it's coming up quickly. So each week, we're going to focus on two different divisions, and that will give us just enough time to be finished before week one starts. So we're going to start going by alphabetical order. So, thus, we have to start with the AFC East. And I know Christopher here doesn't believe me that's the reason we're doing this for some reason.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that you are doing this just so you get to talk about your beloved Dolphins first. But that's beside the point.
Well, it's never a bad day to talk about the Dolphins, but I could have, put it off to next week or the week after and still would have been just as content.
You say that now.
Yeah, I do. So this week we're here with Christopher Kaufman, of course, our beloved staff member, to say the least, as well as Justin Dade. He's going to come back and out of fantasypros.com, Atlanta Falcons correspondent. He's done a good job with us so far, so we're going to bring him back for this one as well, and hopefully some in the future. How you doing, Justin?
Doing great, Hayes. Thanks for having me back on. I'd love to talk about the NFL.
Oh yeah, well, I love it too. So we'll go ahead and get right into this. All right, guys? So first, AFC East, the Patriots, Dolphins, Jets, and Bills. So we're going to just talk about each team, some of the acquisitions and losses they had this offseason, maybe some predictions for how they'll do this year, just some of the main storylines surrounding each team, and then we'll give our division winner for each division and over under for their win total. So we'll go ahead and start with the Patriots, who have, well, we've talked about them enough, I think, this offseason.
Yes, we have.
Let's just go ahead and start out by saying that. But we haven't really actually talked about the team. We've been talking about Tom Brady and the Deflategate scandal, so we're gonna go ahead and consider the actual Patriots right now, outside of Tom Brady, how their team is shaping up for this year and what we should expect of them. So, obviously, first off, Tom Brady right now is expected to miss the first 4 games of the season, so Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the starter there at quarterback. But as far as acquisitions go for the Patriots this offseason, they brought in Jabal Sheard as well as Brandon Gibson and Malcolm Brown in the draft in the first round. And Brown is a guy who is probably going to make up for the absence of Vince Wilfork,
Yep.
who is one of the lead guys in the losses category for the Patriots. Also, another big name here, Darrelle Revis, arguably the best cornerback in the league today. And according to Brandon Marshall today, even actually on First Take, he thinks he's the best cornerback ever. But, that's just Brandon Marshall talking again.
Yep.
They also lost their other quarter, Brandon Browner. He's going to be gone this year, as well as Shane Vereen, their pass catching specialist out of the backfield. So it's going to be a lot of change for the Patriots this year. Not only Tom Brady missing the first 4 games, but a lot of change on the defensive side, and missing one of their key cogs on the defensive line, Vince Wilfork, who's been a staple of New England's for a while. So let's go ahead and consider their win total for this year. Over under 11 wins for the Patriots.
I say either even or over. Taking into fact the 4 game suspension, I believe that they go 2-2 during that time, and that's just leaving Brady to go 9-3, which I believe he can. It's the matter of the defense, though. The offense, pretty much, you plug anybody into that offense, and Brady is going to make them shine. But the defense, the loss of Will Fork and Browner and Revis, that takes a toll into it, which makes me lean more towards them finishing 11-5. I think at best They go, excuse me, at best they go 12-4. That's just my opinion on the matter.
Um, yeah, I wanna touch on some more of those acquisitions and things like that. Yeah, Vince
Wentzville
Wilfork was
Fork.
yeah, Vince Wilfork was an important player for the Patriots, but I think in that first round, Malcolm Brown was the steal of that first round. I was waiting for it the whole time. As soon as I saw the Patriots sitting there, and we were like at pick 26, and I was saying, I bet you the Patriots get Malcolm Brown and steal him, and they did. And I think Malcolm
and
Brown will fit just well. Go ahead, Hayes.
and no, I was just gonna add in, in New England Patriots fashion, stealing another player in the draft. But go ahead.
Right. And another thing you didn't mention, Gerard Mayo will be back this year. Gerard Mayo will be back another year of Jamie Collins, who was absolutely incredible last season. That linebacking core and that front seven, I think, will be fine. The only problem I have on their defense is the cornerback situation, where they have, oh boy, just about nobody.
Well, they're leaning on Malcolm Brown as their
Ugh.
lead guy in the secondary, which is I think that's a mistake.
I mean, we don't have to worry about their safeties. Devin McCourty is probably the best
Yeah,
free safety in the game.
McCourty
They
will be
also got Earl
fine.
Thomas, but
Yeah, but as far as cornerbacks go, they are a little weak.
they are weak there. And I would, you know, on offense, I like the things that they've done. I think the offensive line will be better. I'm not worried about losing Shane Vereen because I'm high on guys like James White and Travaris Cadet who can do that pass catching type thing. And like we said earlier in that last week's podcast, we think Jimmy Garoppolo can go 2-2 in those first 2 games, in those first 4 games, and I think that he can do that. And I think that I would say 11-5 is about right. I would say even on that.
I'm gonna have to agree with you guys. I'm gonna push this one. 11-5 for the Patriots this year. 2-2 in the first 4 games. We're all there. We're actually agreeing on something for once, which is surprising. But
Hayes, I don't know if you know this, but we agreed on the first two topics that we talked about this podcast.
no,
Wow.
we're on a roll. Well, I mean, we didn't really agree about Ray Rice, but
Oh yeah.
Whatever. We agreed about Russell
Russell
Wilson,
Wilson.
and
Okay,
like
okay,
there were two questions within there.
gotcha. But
That's what I meant.
I like what you said about James White. I actually just drafted him in a fantasy league a few days ago because I feel like he is the next Shane Vereen for the New England Patriots. I liked him a lot coming out last year out of Wisconsin. Uh,
Wisco.
yeah, out of Wisconsin. I liked him a lot. He had some kind of crazy amount of yards per carry. I don't have it on me, but I know it was spectacular. So he's got a lot of talent, and I think he's going to shine this year in New England. So we're not gonna miss Shane Vereen much. I don't believe Tom Brady will be just fine. We're not gonna worry about him. For me, the defense is the problem. Losing Vince Wilfork is a big deal, but like you said, I feel like he is replaceable to a certain degree. Bringing in Malcolm Brown, I like him a lot as well. I think their defensive line is going to be fine when considering they have Chandler Jones as well, and then you know Dominique Easley as well
Yep.
from Florida. He's coming back from an injury.
And let's
So
not downplay the addition of Jabal Sheard. He was
yeah,
one of my favorite players in free agency. And he doesn't, I mean, he'll get some sacks, but he plays the run really well.
yep, I agree with you there. So I think their defensive line is going to be fine. The cornerbacks is where the issue for me starts.
I think
And I
that's
think
where it ends,
it's
too.
yeah, I think it's I think that's really gonna be the spot that holds back the Patriots this year as the season progresses. Because in today's NFL, you've got to have a solid rotation of cornerbacks. You
Yep.
can't even have one. You got to have at least two, really three or
You
four.
need three. I think you
Really
need three.
three or four to be a good secondary. So considering Malcolm Brown is their lead guy, who really only got his name out there because of his play at the
It's
end of Super.
Malcolm Butler, isn't it?
Was I saying Malcolm Brown?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Malcolm
That's all
Butler.
right.
You're
Don't worry. I
right.
was just making sure.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, Malcolm Butler. Can you really trust him going into this year as your lead corner? That's where I have a problem with the Patriots this year. And for every great Patriots team, they've had a great defense, and I don't see it this year, so I don't see them repeating. I see them going 11-5, barely winning the AFC East, and
Have you
prob
seen the rest of the West? AFC East?
I have seen the AFC, the rest of the AFC East. Have you?
Dolphins are not going to win it, Hayes. They're not
Did
going
I?
to win it.
I did not say they were going to win it, but
Oh,
I was
oh,
going to
so
talk
you
about
assume the
numbers.
Jets are going to win? The
No, he said
No,
the
Bills?
I just said the Patriots are going to win it,
yeah,
but
he
they're
I
said
mean,
the
barely going to win it.
in contention to win. Do you really think the Dolphins, Jets, or Bills are going to be on the same level as the
Have you seen the
Patriots?
improvement those three teams have made this offseason? The NFC
Jets?
East is the best division in the NFL. I will tell you that right now. I am really excited to see this division this year. But we're about to go over that right now. So let's move into the
yeah.
Dolphins here. Over under 9 wins. Justin.
I'll go over. I just looked at the schedule, and it's pretty easy to start out with, and then when we get to clutch time, when the wins really need to happen, it gets tough. But I think that 10-6 is possible for the Dolphins this year. I like Ryan Tannehill, and I think the offense, the only question marks they have are that offensive line, which could really hold them back. But on defense, I like just about everything. I'm a big Brent Grimes fan. Rashad Jones is the emerging safety there. Obviously, the defensive line is incredible. We don't need to touch on that. And Jelani Jenkins is an up and coming linebacker as well. I think the defense will be pretty darn good, just like every other defense in that division. But the offensive line is what I'm really concerned about, and that schedule at the end, playing the Patriots and the Colts and the Ravens and teams like that at the end stretch will really decide their fate, I think.
I could not agree with you more, to be honest.
Same.
Yeah, I think not. I go back and forth between 9-7 and 10-6, but I'll go with the over right now. I think
Just
ten
because
and
you're a Dolphins fan?
no, I think 10-6. I think 10-6 is the spot where the Dolphins will eventually land this year because really they have absolutely no excuse not to start 6-0 this year because
Whoa.
the beginning of their schedule is ridiculously easy. So if they don't, if they're not at least 5-1 or 6-0 to start the year, there's probably you're gonna have some concern going down the stretch because that schedule does get really tough down the
And then
stretch.
what's probably going to happen is there's going to be people that are going to start hyping the Dolphins a little bit.
Yeah,
Start to get, some national praise, and then once you get past that Houston game, at New England, at Buffalo, at Philadelphia, home against Dallas, then you fly to New York to play the Jets defense. Then you have Baltimore, and then you get to the last 3 weeks at San Diego, and then you have the Colts and the Patriots.
yeah,
That's
it's absolutely brutal down the stretch for the Dolphins. So unfortunately, I think you're going to see a little bit of the past 2 years where they start off really hot and they blow it down the stretch. But I think they're going to get. I think they're just good enough this year to where they're really going to challenge for a wild card spot.
I
I
agree.
still think the Patriots are going to end up winning the division, as much as it hurts me to say that because I think this is the year where it's really open. But New England's still just a little bit better than these teams.
No,
Um,
also, Bill Belichick is probably the best coach in the league.
yeah,
And when you question what comes to mind, when anybody questions anything on the Patriots, you make yourself wonder. I mean, Tom or Bill Belichick knows what he's doing here. Okay, I mean he's got rings on rings on rings,
yeah.
and I mean you really got to wonder. And you got to. I trust in Belichick. I really do.
Well, and let me just go over some of the acquisitions and losses here really quickly for the Dolphins. Obviously, the big one is Ndamukong Suh. That's going to be huge for the Dolphins. You almost can't even put into words the impact he'll have for their defense,
Well, he better
especially
because that contract is huge as well.
especially for their rush defense this year. Really, really big impact player for them, who I think is going to help take them to the next level. Also, they brought in Greg Jennings and Kenny Stills at wide receiver. Kenny Stills coming from New Orleans, and then Greg Jennings on the free agent market. Also signed tight end Jordan Cameron on in free agency, And then Bryce McCain, who's a cornerback in free agency, a guy that is not really well known or not really recognized by a lot of people, but he's going to be a big, big factor for the Dolphins this year as kind of the number two corner slash nickel corner for them this year. It's going to be a big spot for them because it was a position that they had poor depth at last year because of injuries, and it really hurt them down the stretch. So, McCain along with Jamar Taylor, it's kind of a spot to watch for the Dolphins as far as the secondary goes. And then
Is it
obviously,
the coming out party for Jamar Taylor? Or it's about time.
if it's got to be this year. For everything I've heard, he's looked really good. He's looked a lot better than he has last year. And granted, the Dolphins secondary, for them, it's not an easy position to learn for rookie corners coming in. It's a complex scheme that the defense that they run. So that's why they don't put a lot of stock into rookies making a big impact. So him as a second year player, it's his time to shine. And if he doesn't, then it's going to be a position that's going to have to be addressed next offseason. But they brought in Bryce McCain, uh, you know, to kind of be a veteran presence there to ensure they have some kind of stability outside of Grimes. But uh, you know, also another acquisition in the draft was Devontae Parker, who's we'll see how he does this year. I think he's going to get off to a slow start, but he's again down the stretch. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a big part of that offense. As far as losses go, they lost Mike Wallace and Brian Hartline. I don't care about them.
No.
Good riddance. Jared
Hmm.
Odrick, Randy Starks lost on the defensive line. Again, good riddance. We have Ndamukong Suh. Have fun wherever you are now. Well, I know where they are but now, but Donnell Ellerby and Philip Wheeler, good riddance to you as well. You
Yep.
were terrible. And Cortland Finnegan, he's gone as
Even
well.
see ya.
Another guy, good riddance. So, as me being a Dolphins fan, they literally got rid of everybody that was bad on the team last year that was overpaid. And then they brought in guys like Ndamukong Suh, some good young wide receivers who were cheap. I really, really liked what the Dolphins did this year, and this is not even coming from just a Dolphins fan. This is just as an NFL fan in general. They really did a great job. I think the Dolphins, along with the Jets, probably had the two best off seasons in the NFL this year.
Well, I agree with you there. I do think the Dolphins got a lot better. I just hope that Ryan Tannehill can make 16 games. I just
Yeah.
And that's the question right now. The offensive line is getting battered in training camp right now. Granted, they are facing one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, but it's looking bad right now. The offensive guards, you're going to struggle with Jamil Douglas. He's a rookie. He's probably going to have to start with, at the status quo right now over
Dallas Thomas was just awful.
Dallas Thomas deserves to go to the Arena Football League where they don't play
Yes.
offensive line. He is an absolute travesty at offensive
I
guard.
think they had the worst guard pairing in the league last year. It's quite possible.
Yeah, I, I have no problem saying that because the offensive guard position was an absolute train wreck for the Dolphins last year. It really was embarrassing. But really, the offensive line depends on one factor, right, this year, and that is the health of Brandon Albert.
I was gonna say the Albert factor. Yep.
Yeah. If he is healthy, even 80% starting the year, they'll be okay because at least Albert will, be paired next to Douglas on the left side of the line. So he'll help out the rookie a little bit. Jawan James is going to be great. He's a right tackle, rookie, first round rookie last year. He's going to be great. He's good. Obviously, Pouncey at center, no problems there. One of the best centers in the league. It's the two guard spots that are the issue right now. So Billy Turner, who's a second year player, I think he's going to be okay. He can man the spot. He can hold down the fort a little bit. He's not a guy who's going to be great, but he'll be good enough. It's really Jamil Douglas. is the guy to watch for the Dolphins. And if they can't get that offensive line going, it might just be the factor that keeps them out of the playoffs this year. What do you think, Christopher? You haven't said much. You pretty much agree?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know much about the AFC East when it comes to this side of things. I mean, I can see them like what you guys were saying, going 10-6. Dolphins. I know that I've known that they haven't had a too terribly good offensive line, but I mean, the acquisitions they made are going to help them along the way, as you guys were saying. The Dominican Sue is going to play a big factor into that. And like I said, 10-6 is where I put them.
Yep.
I think they make the playoffs. I really do.
I sure hope so because it's been a rough ride for a little while here as a Dolphins fan. But we're hoping for some good things this year. The motto is no excuses because they have no excuses this year. Really, the biggest question mark for me is Joe Philbin, the guy who isn't even on the playing field. He's the head coach, so we'll see if he can actually lead a team to the playoffs. So that's offensive guard and Joe Philbin.
All
Those are the
right.
two things to watch for the Dolphins this year. But moving on to the Jets, over under 8 wins.
Under.
Hmm. Care
They're
to
the,
elaborate?
they're the Jets. I mean, come on, who do they have as their quarterback? Exactly. They have the worst quarterback in the league. I mean, sure, you can. Quarterbacks don't mean everything. I mean, we were talking about the Seahawks earlier, where the quarterback they have is great, but he's not the main guy contributing to the wins on the team. Sure, he helps a lot towards it, but he's not the main guy. That being said, you still have to have a good quarterback to win. Along with that, you still have to have a decent enough offensive line, and I don't believe the Jets have that. Also, you're gonna need somebody to take the load off of the quarterback, just any running back practically at this point. And who do they have at running back? Remind me again.
Chris
Chris,
Ivory.
Exactly.
that's what I was going to touch on. We can talk about Geno Smith all we want, and we all know where that conversation's going to end. But I just don't understand why yes, they're surrounding him with receiving talent. Yes, I understand they traded for Brandon Marshall and they drafted Devin Smith. Yes, they have that. But a quarterback who struggles as much as he does, they need to take the ball out of his hands. Okay, and they have done just about nothing to help the running game in the last few seasons. They have a ton of washed up running backs on their roster, but they don't have anyone who can legitimately help them.
Well, and they did go out and get Stephen Ridley this offseason.
Again,
I know, well, not
Stephen
again.
Ridley.
I know.
I
He's
mean,
not
again with
bad
my
if he can.
point, this is the first time he's on the Jets,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I got you. But I mean, he's not bad if he can hold on to the football.
Which he can. You
Yeah.
have to hand to that.
So,
Or stay healthy.
in my mind, the Jets' biggest move this offseason was getting rid of Rex Ryan.
well, and
That was their biggest and best move.
let me go through some of their acquisitions here. Again, they got Darrell Revis and Antonio Cromartie added to the secondary. That's gonna be
Both are
huge,
huge, very huge.
huge for them.
Still
We
need an offense.
we touched on Brandon Marshall and Stephen Ridley, as well as Devin Smith in the draft, but they even got Buster Screen in the
Right.
secondary as well. And
He can
then,
play nickel, yeah.
yep, and then Leonard Williams, who's probably going to be a guy who can replace Sheldon Richardson for this year. And really, their only loss was Percy Harvin, which is
Not a
actually
big
kind of
one
a
at that.
positive to a certain degree, considering his cancerous self.
We all know the Jets defense is going to be really good. I mean, they have
Yeah.
probably one of the most intimidating front sevens there is. That's pretty common throughout the whole division. I just don't get that offense. Why they haven't
Ex-
touched on the running game at all.
I don't know.
exactly. They might only give up 7 points a game, but they're scoring zero.
I think you guys are disparaging their offense to a certain degree.
They
It's
have
not
Geno
that bad.
Smith as the
Okay,
quarterback.
hold up. Hold on a second though. Okay, you got Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker at wide receiver.
They
That's
have
solid.
they have Geno Smith throwing it to them,
Hold on a
trying
second.
to throw it
Hold
to
on
him.
a second. Hold on. hold on, let me finish here. You got Brendan Marshall and Eric Decker.
Who aren't going to touch the ball.
A very nice duo at wide receiver. Then they've got Jason Morrow, who's an up-and-coming tight end.
Who's not going to touch the ball.
Very good receiving tight end. Then at running back, you've got a trio of Chris Ivory, Stephen Ridley, and Zach Stacy. Oh, man. Chris Ivory's not a bad running back. Did you see him last
I had him on my fantasy team. He was a terrible running back.
That's because their offense in general was pretty terrible last year. But
where's your point?
They've added Brandon Marshall and
your
Devin
own point in one
Smith.
sentence.
They added Devin Smith and Brandon Marshall. How can your offense not get better?
Because
the offensive line is going to be fine.
Because the opposing secondary is going to touch the ball more times than those wide receivers.
Well, hold on, let me finish. Geno Smith, as bad as he doesn't have to be their starter.
Who's going to start? Mark Sanchez? He's on the Eagles. Never mind.
You could throw in Ryan Fitzpatrick and just let him manage the ship. Like, their defense is so good. Their wide receivers are very solid. They're going to run the football a lot. Let Ryan Fitzpatrick just kind of not screw it up.
Now, I will say this. Ryan Fitzpatrick is one of my favorite quarterbacks until he shaved.
I was about to say, I know you love him for his beard.
Your point of they're going to run the ball a lot, sure, they may do that, but it's a matter of how effective they're going to be. That trio of running backs, you could have all three of them in at the same time, and they're not going to get more than 3 yards. I know that's impossible because only one of them can have the ball, but I was trying to make a point and it didn't work. But that being said, they're not going to be effective. They could touch the ball more times than they throw the ball. They're not scoring with that offense. It's just too awful for them to score.
Dive into some more specifics here. When we look at that offensive line, the left side I'm a little more okay with, but when we look on the right side with, the rejects they got from Seattle and Carpenter and Giacomini, it really has me worried. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well, and that has me concerned considering they don't have a quarterback either.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're going to be okay on the offensive line. I wouldn't consider it a big concern of theirs. Really, the only concern I have for the Jets is at quarterback, because when you look outside of quarterback for this roster, there are very few holes, really. And I know you guys are saying, well, the wide receiver core is not that great, or whatever, the offensive line isn't that great. But really, in reality, every team has holes in the NFL, and the Jets are one of those teams where they really don't have a hole outside of quarterback. So I feel like that is the one thing that could hold them back this year. I don't know. I feel like New York is good enough to make the playoffs if a guy
No.
if
First
a guy
off, they have a blaring hole at running back, which you regret to mention. You failed to mention.
I feel like a three-headed monster of Chris Ivory, Stephen Ridley, and Zach Stacy is good enough.
Oh, that's a monster, all right.
I think you're undermining them a little bit. Chris Ivory is a little bit more talented than you think.
I had him. I've stated this before. I've had him on my fantasy team. I know how untalented he is. I'm not saying he's a terrible football player. He's a good football player. He's in the NFL, but he's a bad NFL player. If you get what I'm saying. Not to take any credit away from him or his football skills, just everybody else is better than him.
Oh gosh. Okay, well, I think he has the ability to. He and Stephen Ridley both have the ability to rush for 1,000 yards. I'm not saying they are going to individually, but I feel like they have the stable of running backs to at least be effective rushing the football. I mean, you're going to have guys that are fresh. It's not like you're just leaning on one average guy.
I think I did read that they want Ivory to be a 3-down back. Am I right on that? I thought I saw that somewhere.
I think I saw that too, so yeah. I'm going to look up Ivory's stats here, just to prove you.
He had 850 yards last year.
821.
Okay.
And hold up here.
Which I'm not saying
he had
that's
6 rushing TDs, only 6.
Yeah.
That's really not bad.
it's. I mean, you do realize that was probably like 15th in the NFL, maybe even higher.
I think what the point we're trying to get here, Hayes, is that we don't think that that running game can benefit Geno Smith enough to help that offense move the ball. In my opinion, I guess is what I think he's trying to say.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's not going to take the it's not going to take the amount. I'm trying to think of a way to say this. It's not going to be a big of a load taken off of Geno Smith in order to impact the Jets season as much as you are saying it will.
I don't know if I can say Geno Smith is their starting quarterback right now.
Then who?
I feel like Ryan Fitzpatrick could at least steady the ship. He's
I
not
could s- I
that
could see
bad.
that. I could see that.
He's not that bad. And if you've got that defense, that good of a defense, and you've got pretty good receivers, I feel like Ryan Fitzpatrick could at least get you. I'm not saying they're going to get to the playoffs, but they are going to compete for a playoff spot, I think, at least.
With a first-year head coach,
I like me
Hey,
some
if
Todd
I'd take a
Bowles.
first-year head coach over Rex Ryan any day.
I like me
Rex
some
Ryan's a
Ted
good
Bowles.
football coach. I don't care what anybody says.
Or sorry, Todd Bowles. I like me some Todd Bowles. I think he's gonna hit that defense. I can't say this enough. That defense is gonna be extremely good. I'm
You still
talking
need to score the ball to
historically
win.
good.
You
Look,
still need to score the ball to win.
and I feel like the offense is just good enough to score. They can score 20 points a game and be fine. Like if this team gets to 17 to 21 points per game, they're gonna win more than 8 games. I'll tell
They're
you that
not
right
getting
now.
there though. That's the thing. That's
Mhm.
that's the line in the sand. They're not getting to 17 points. They may not even get 10. I know that's an exaggeration, but look at how bad this offense is. Their wide receiving
I
core,
think
I will give them that. It's not as bad as what
they've
people
got
say they are.
three,
That's a
and
pretty good wide receiver core. But the fact that I know you're saying you're bringing up Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I do believe if now correct me if I'm wrong. I think I read somewhere that they said Geno Smith is going to be starting week one. Now I'm not entirely sure about that, but if that's the case, those wide receivers aren't touching the ball the entire game.
yeah, Geno Smith will start week one, and then by week two they'll bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick because they realize how terrible he is.
That's a good that would be a good game plan for the Jets.
Yeah, because Geno Smith is. I'm not gonna try to argue that Geno Smith is a good quarterback because, and it
He's the
was
worst quarterback in the NFL, worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now.
I. That's you can't really argue that. It's and it was kind of funny. I was thinking to myself, I was watching ESPN First Take when they were at Jets camp, and Brandon Marshall was on, and he was defending Geno Smith, but he also defended Jay Cutler. So you know,
Yep.
but he even went on to say that he was living with Geno Smith for a couple of months, and he was ragging him for how sloppy he was. Like he would leave pizza boxes around his room and stuff like that. And it just made me think, like, just kind of like his demeanor on the field. He's kind of sloppy all around in his life.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
Sloppy on the
All
field
right.
and sloppy off the field. It's kind of how Geno Smith is, eh?
Hayes has the inside info, guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I learned that from Todd Bowles myself.
Oh, I
But
thought you lived there too. Oh, maybe not.
no, I wouldn't really want to live with Geno Smith. Granted, I don't know him personally, but according to that sentiment that he's very sloppy, I'm not up for that life.
All right.
He's not about that life.
Yeah, but I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree here. I think the Jets' offense is a little bit better than you guys give them credit for, but as far as the Bills go, they're a very similar team. Their defense is completely stacked, and their offense, well, is pretty good outside of quarterback. They have no quarterback, and their general manager even went on to say that they are currently in quarterback purgatory. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I know how the Bills are feeling right now being a Kansas City Chiefs fan. They currently have Matt Castle listed as their number one quarterback. Now, if that's the case for the whole season, the Bills are in big trouble. It doesn't matter what LaShawn McCoy does. Matt Castle, I mean, his negative impact on the field is just so massive. It's just going to be a big play. Now, did I want to say Sammy Watkins? Is that right? Is that his name? Still the wide
Yeah.
receiver for the
Yes.
Bills?
Yes.
I mean, no, it doesn't matter what wide receiver you put there. With Matt Castle throwing it to them, I mean, I know I've stated that Geno Smith is the worst quarterback in the league, and I would say Matt Castle is a strong number two for that spot, for second worst.
Yeah, and let me just go ahead and give you some of the acquisitions and losses for the Bills this offseason. They big one was bringing in LaShawn McCoy. They traded him or traded for him. They traded Kiko Alonso though in the process. They also brought in Percy Harvin.
Ooh,
Uh-oh. Ooh, that's gonna be interesting. Matt Castle, the second worst quarterback in the NFL according to Mr. Christopher Kaufman. Charles Clay from Miami, who is a good get, but an expensive one, probably a little pricey. And then they also got Richie Incognito,
Yep.
who
huh.
he kind of went incognito there. Not many people knew
Well,
he
wait,
was
was he the one who got bullied, or was he the bully?
Oh,
he
was the
was he
player.
was the bully.
Ah,
So, and he's gonna start for them at offensive guard. So that's gonna be quite interesting. Percy Harvin and Richie Incognito in the same locker room, and Rex Ryan. Why is Hard
oh
Knocks
boy,
not in Buffalo?
I don't know.
That would have been a
that's
show.
a good question.
But as far as losses go, they obviously lost Kiko Alonso, who was missed all of last season, but as a rookie he was a complete stud. Also lost Brandon Spikes, Denoris Searcy, Leotis McKelvin, and Scott Chandler. So you talked about the Bills a little bit, Christopher, but why don't we let Justin give his thoughts here?
I like the Bills this year a lot. They're in a tough division to play. I would say if they're in a different division, they could be way more successful than they probably will be this year. But I love that defense, and I love Rex Ryan there, who's going to lead that. That defensive line is just unreal with Williams, Darius Hughes, and then they've got some young linebackers that can really play in Preston Brown, Nigel Bradham, excuse me. And the secondary is average at best. But I think they'll be okay there. And then, offense, yes, quarterback's an issue. I think LaShawn McCoy has a bounce back year. I think he plays pretty well. That offensive line is average at best, I would say. But I don't think there's any way that you can say that the Bills are worse off than the Jets right now. I think that Matt Castle is a way better quarterback than Geno Smith. I think that they're going to be able to run the ball better. And I really like the receiving core, too. I like the Bills this year, guys.
Well,
Yeah,
and
what I was saying earlier, I wasn't saying the Bills are going to do too terribly bad. I'm saying they're going to have their struggles. Like you brought up a good point saying that the division they play in is going to make it hard on them. I could see the Bills. Uh, I see 500 as a best case scenario. Maybe a little bit over, maybe 9-7, but
well, and
I
see,
think the Bills end up like around 500 that area.
this is where a lot of people just don't understand about the Bills is that they went 9-7 last year,
They
and you
gave Tom Brady a run for his money,
yeah,
too.
and you
Hmm.
have to think that they've improved this offseason, at least adding LaShawn McCoy and Percy Harvin. I know he's a locker room cancer, but if he can stay healthy, he's an explosive talent on the offensive end. Matt Castle's got to be better than what they had last year, even if he is pretty terrible. And don't rule out EJ Manuel either as a possible starter there. Um, I do
It's
think,
hard for Manuel to get any worse.
yeah, I do think Castle's going to end up winning that job because I could see Rex Ryan just going with the guy who's going to stay somewhat consistent and not lose games for them. And I feel like Matt Castle is just good enough to like throw for like 200 yards and like no interceptions, no turnovers, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Their quarterback situation is a mess right now, just like the Jets, and I feel like they're very similar teams. Both are on the fringe of being good. They just need a quarterback.
Yep.
I
It's fair
don't
to say.
think there's any other way of saying it. I mean, outside of quarterback, these teams are very good. They look, if you take away the quarterback position, the Bills and the Jets have some of the best rosters in the NFL. But, unfortunately, in the NFL, if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win. So,
A lot of people are kind of downplaying this LaShawn McCoy trade. Rex Ryan's going to pound the ball a lot,
yep.
and they've got Fred Jackson to pull McCoy out every now and then. But it's very possible McCoy could see 350 touches this year. He could have trouble with the running lanes like he did in Philadelphia. He has if he doesn't have good blocking for him, he can't find those cutback lanes that he likes so much. But I do think he'll get a lot of touches, and I think that defense is going to keep them in games, in a lot of games. But it's just all going to depend on, obviously, the offense.
Yeah, Rex Ryan's definitely going to run the ball a lot this year when you've got LaShawn McCoy, Fred Jackson, and even Boobie Dixon out there. He has a
Yeah.
third guy who can pound the rock here every once in a while. So for me, I don't think LaShawn McCoy is specifically going to have a good year. As far as yards per carry, I could see it going down because I don't know if he's quite the bruiser, and I don't. Buffalo's offensive line is not as good as the Eagles, and LaShawn
Definitely
McCoy
not.
struggled. I, struggled last year to a certain degree. It wasn't his best year. It wasn't as good without Deshaun Jackson. That was the big thing. When teams put more players in the box, he struggled. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Bills' passing attack can be good enough to threaten defenses so LaShawn McCoy doesn't have to try and outrun 8 people in the box.
Right.
Yeah, so give me your over under for the Bills this year. I got him at 8 wins. Over
Okay.
under or push.
Go ahead, Chris.
Like I said earlier, I'd give that a push. I can see them ending up 500.
I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna give him 9-7 this year. I haven't looked at the schedule, obviously, but I would say 9-7 is a good number, and I think they finish ahead of the Jets for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I would go 9-7 as well. I think I mean, they went 9-7 last year. I can't see them declining this year. Granted, I know the AFC East is better. That's the only way
and
they don't improve or at least
and
stay the same.
it's not like 8-8's a big decline. It's just a one
No,
game difference.
no, I understand. So as far as the AFC East go, so we've got the Patriots at top again, unfortunately.
Hmm.
At we agreed around 11 wins is probably what they'll go
Yeah,
for, 11-5, and then we've got the Dolphins. Justin and I had them at 10-6, and then Chris was at 9-7. And
that's
then
correct.
we're thinking the Bills are probably going to come in third, anywhere from 9-7 to 8-8. And then the thing we disagree on here is the Jets. I think they can be 8-8, but you guys are thinking more like 4 or 5 wins.
I would say 6 or 7.
But Christopher, you're like four
Yeah, I'd
wins.
say 5 or 6.
Okay,
5 or 6.
all right.
Five
I
or
think
six.
I think that's the best division in football, though. I really do, because as I just said, I don't think any team's going to really
I
finish under
don't.
500. But
Well,
I guess we'll disagree there. I don't know. But let's move on to the AFC North, which is another really strong division in the NFL right now, with three teams who made the playoffs last year, in the Ravens, Steelers, and Bengals, and then you kind of got the lowly Browns down there at the bottom.
Yep.
But we'll get into them in a little while. We'll start out with the Ravens. So acquisitions: Brashad Perriman and Max Williams in the draft were their two big guys, as well as Kyle Arrington in free agency. And then they ended up losing Haloti Nada, Torrey Smith, and Ladarius Webb. So over under 11 wins for the Ravens this year.
Go ahead, Chris.
um, I'd say over. I can actually see them producing 12, maybe even 13 wins. I mean, I'm really high up on the Ravens this year. Uh, like the acquisitions you were saying, I think that helps them out just tremendously. I haven't seen their schedule yet, But just knowing this Ravens team, I just, I just see it as a easy 12-4, 13-3 team.
Hmm.
With that tough division, though,
It is a tough division, but I mean,
Yeah, that'd be quite a record in that division. 13 and
I
3,
think
that'd be good.
I
That'd
know
be outstanding, honestly. I mean, that
it's
means
a
you're
bold prediction.
yeah. I like the Ravens. I don't like them that much. I think I maybe a few months ago, 1.5 months ago, when I released my NFL power rankings back then, I had them at number 3, which I've cooled off of them a little bit because I mean they're going to be good this year. I could see them winning 11 games, so I'm going to push. I think 11 is realistic for them. I don't. Haloti Nada is a spot I'm a little bit concerned about because the Ravens really lean on their defensive line and his push, especially in the middle of that defensive line. I mean, he's a big man. He's hard to push, so he really frees up the ends to attack the quarterback. So I think I don't know. I don't see
This,
Baltimore changing that much this year. I feel like they're going to be the same old Ravens, which is about 11 wins.
you're forgetting the fact that the Ravens did draft Darren Waller, the 6'6"
oh
wide
boy, here
receiver
we
from Georgia
go.
Tech. I'm not saying he's going to be anything too special. I'm just excited to see him play in the NFL.
Well, I
Uh,
laugh at that because you brought him up, but I actually do kind of like him in Baltimore. I mean, this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but I could see him having just as good of a career as Brashad Perriman.
that's
I,
pretty crazy.
I know that is really crazy to say. I think that's a bold prediction for me, but I do not like Brashad Perriman. He can't catch the ball. And
But
I
you know
feel
who
like
can? Darren
it's
Waller.
Darren Waller.
Steve
he's,
Smith.
he's basically,
Yes, Steve Smith's still there,
yeah,
right?
Oh
yes,
Isn't he
yeah,
like
yeah.
40?
36, I think.
Jeez.
Might as well be 40.
He's still being effective though after what he put up last year.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's gonna be the go-to guy for Joe Flacco. But
Um, Hayes, I think I'm gonna side with you on 11-5 here. I just took a little quick peek at their schedule. It's not too bad, but I don't think that they can take two from the Ravens. I know they play the Seahawks once.
Wait.
you
I
mean
would love to say
They
12-4, but I can't.
they
I don't.
you mean take two from the Steelers? Is that what you
Yeah,
meant?
I don't think they can. I don't think that. What did I?
Yeah,
okay. You
yeah,
said the Ravens, so
My fault. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's
it's all
okay.
right. It's all right. We
Um,
understood.
So yeah, I would love to say 12-4, but I don't see it happening. We know how Joe Flacco tends to struggle in the regular season, and I look at their cornerback depth chart, and I'm really disappointed. It's
What and
it's not
especially
good.
after losing Webb, who was their main guy, they didn't
Yes.
really bring anybody in there to replace him. I know they still have Jimmy Smith, but he hasn't quite lived up to his potential yet. He can get there. Maybe he will become the lead cornerback, kind of like Webb, but that's up for still trying to be decided.
I love Justin Forsett, and I think the Ravens have a top five offensive line in football. I really Marshall Yanda is probably the best guard in football. I really do like that offensive line, and I think Justin Forsett has another good year catching the ball with Mark Trestman there now as offensive coordinator. I think I'm going to go 11-5.
Yeah, I agree. I think the defense declines a little bit,
A
and I
little
think the
bit.
offense takes a step forward. So I don't know if I'm going to say the Ravens are going to win this division yet, but we'll see. Let's go through the other teams first. Next, we'll go through the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think they had a pretty solid offseason myself. They brought in Bud Dupree in the first round, a pass rushing specialist who's really going to help them out. They just traded for Brandon Boykin from Philadelphia, which raised some speculation, but we're not going to get into that quite yet. Also, they brought in D'Angelo Williams, running back out of Carolina,
Ugh.
to I guess carry the load for the first few games when Le'Veon Bell will be
Yep.
suspended. Also brought in Sammy Coates and Senquez Golson and Mike
Olsen
Mitchell.
got hurt too.
hmm So, but they also lost two of their main, guys in the secondary, Ike Taylor and Troy Polamalu. I mean, they're kind of the figureheads in their secondary, but they weren't quite effective anymore. So
They
it's
were
not
more
really,
so leaders in the locker room than
yeah,
uh, effective players.
precisely. They were. They won't be large losses. The Steelers are going towards some more youth at the in the secondary. Uh, so, what are you guys thinking for the Steelers? I've right now over under 10 wins.
Oh,
I'll let you take this one.
I'm gonna go over. I think it's easy to go over 10 wins with Pittsburgh. We know how good that offense is. I don't think we have a problem there at all. The offensive line will get a little better, I think. Antonio Brown is the best wide receiver in football, in my opinion. And in that division, the only corner he really has to worry about is Joe Hayden. Um, I think that they continue to run the ball very well. I'm looking at their schedule here, and it's not too bad. I mean, they have the Patriots week 1, and then they go to Seattle after their bye, though, so that'll give them at least a fighting chance. Um, the defense, they should be all right. I still don't think they have a pass rush. Jarvis Jones has been a huge disappointment. But I do think the safeties are going to be fine, though. That's Shamarko Thomas. Is that his name, I believe?
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
he's a human missile from what I've heard. Um, I think the defense will be fine. I think I'm going to go 11-5 also.
Okay, go ahead, Christopher.
I can actually see that happening as well. But I did previously say that the Ravens could potentially go 13-3, so somebody has to be taking those losses, and that has to be the Steelers. I'd give it a push, put them at 10-6. It's historically that's a good record for the Steelers. I know historically doesn't mean anything for the present, but um, excuse me. Like you were saying, the offense has only gotten better. The defense still got to worry about the pass rushing, and I think the youth within the secondary will actually help them out more than people will actually think.
Well, and I agree. I like what
Making
they've done. I like what
say that,
they've done in the secondary. Sorry to cut you
yeah,
off there for a second, but
that's fine. Go right ahead.
um, they've really shown an infusion of youth here in the secondary, bringing in Boykin, even Golson in the draft. They also got, they got Cortez Allen and William Gay. So I think they're going to be okay in the secondary. It's getting better. It's going to be better than what it was last year. Pass rushing, it's got to be better with Bud Dupree. You'd have to think. I really, really like him out of Kentucky. So it's got to be better. I know James Harrison's still there. I don't know how he's still playing football, to be honest with you, but he's being somewhat effective. So I think while the defense is going to be the lesser part of the Steelers this year, maybe the downside for them, something that's going to hamper them.
Would
It's going to
would you
be
would you
it,
agree that Cameron Hayward is? I would say that Cameron Hayward's still the best pass rusher on the team. And this isn't a knock against Cameron Hayward because he's a fantastic football player, but
yeah.
he's not your thoroughbred pass rusher. He might get six, maybe seven, but I don't think they have anything else.
Honestly, that's fair to say at this point because we don't know what you're going to get out of Bud Dupree. But I think Bud Dupree definitely has the bigger upside as far as pass rushing goes. So if he
Well,
can live up to his expectations, I really like him as a pass rusher. That's going to help them out a lot. And you got to think they are getting Ryan Shazier back. He's got to improve. He had a really poor season last year as a rookie. He had dealt through some injuries. I really like him as a linebacker. Um, so I think the defense is going to be just good enough because the offense is really good. I'm
yep,
talking really good. Like I think it's fair to say they have one of the top three offenses in the league.
yep,
I don't think it's hard to say that. So considering Ben Roethlisberger tied for the most passing yards last year, had the best statistical season of his career. They got Martavis Bryant in there, who's really an up and coming wide receiver. Antonio Brown, like you said, the probably the one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in the league. Even got Marcus Wheaton, who's no slouch himself. Obviously
Sammy
led.
Coates could get some red zone looks.
Yep. Le'Veon Bell, one of the best young backs in the league this year. Um, I don't know. It's hard to see them winning less than 11 games for me.
I agree.
I really like the Steelers this year. I think in an NFC that doesn't really have an undisputable top dog, they might have a fighting chance for a Super Bowl appearance, depending on how well Indianapolis's defense plays.
Fair.
Fair to say?
Yep.
Hmm.
All right, so let's move on to Cincinnati. They brought in AJ Hawk this year as well as Michael Johnson, and then a couple offensive linemen early in the draft, Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher, but
Yep.
they also lost Ray Mawaluga and Terrence Newman. So, what are you guys thinking? Over under 10 wins for the Cincinnati Bengals this year?
I'll go ahead and start this out. Um, the Bengals, they're going to be interesting this year, and I think they're going to disappoint a lot of people. Um,
Hmm.
Andy Dalton, for me, is good, but he's not good enough to compete in this division, in my opinion. AJ Green can't do it all. I know their running backs are fantastic. They'll be just fine running the ball. Abuehi, he'll be good, and Jake Fisher will get in there. But I really think that this defense is going to take more steps backwards. I really do. To be honest with you, this Bengals team could finish 6-10, 7-9. It's possible. It's just I don't like the Bengals this year.
I'm in the same boat as you. Pretty much same points you brought up, but I don't see them sinking as low as what you were saying. I'd say under 10 wins definitely. I say best at best they have a 9-7, but I can see them going 500, 8-8.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys as well. I for me,
I've
I
never
like
been
to
a
see.
I've never
I
been a big fan of Andy Dalton, just saying that now.
Yeah, I like to see teams improve over the offseason, or at least on paper improve, because most teams after the offseason are usually pretty happy with themselves. You know, they think they've had a good offseason, they think they've improved. I don't see it with Cincinnati. Like I feel like they're just completely blah. Like
Yeah.
Hmm.
there you can't get excited about anything on this team. Their running game is going to be good. Their offensive line is going to improve, bringing some of the two younger players, and then I know they're going to get healthier this year on the offensive line. But is Andy Dalton really good enough to take the next step?
Nope.
Is AJ Green going to stay healthy this year? Is the defense really going to keep up with its ways of the past? I don't know.
That
I just
secondary worries me a lot.
and it's
Yeah.
been a worry for the past 3 or 4 years now, and they still haven't really addressed it. They haven't done anything to improve in that aspect. The defensive line used to be great, but I mean they brought in Michael Johnson this year, but they struggled passing, rushing the quarterback last year. Uh,
They were the worst in league. They
yeah, yeah.
said
AJ Hawk, he's not going to be anybody to write home about.
no, he's past his prime for sure.
Yeah, so eight
Yeah.
and eight or 9-7, especially in this division, I feel like is the ceiling for Cincinnati. I don't. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. There's
I don't.
no
No.
way, and how deep the AFC is this year. No
I
way.
think I think I'd like to see Andy Dalton get traded. I know that's probably not going to happen, but if the
Not with
Bengals
his
are,
contract.
I know that's exactly
Yeah,
what I was meaning.
yeah.
But if the Bengals are struggling come like maybe trade deadline or maybe halfway through the season, I would really, really like to see them giving more reps to AJ McCarron because
Oh.
I, I can see him being a good NFL quarterback one day. Let's say what you will about that, but
I
you
don't
know,
know.
my point. I want to ask you guys a question. Say, the Bengals miss the playoffs, or at best make the playoffs and lose in the first round again, because I don't think Andy Dalton can win one. He hasn't proven that he can. What do they do with Dalton? I mean, they got to start seriously considering possibly moving on.
exactly.
I just don't know if you can move on from his nearly $100 million contract. They kind of screwed themselves in that aspect. They're they're stuck. I don't think there's because no one's going to take him, not for that contract, at
Well,
least.
nobody thought anybody was going to take Troy Tulowitzki, throwing it back to baseball here for a second. But Blue Jays, out of everybody, the Blue Jays took him. So I know it's a different sport, but no contract is untradeable.
Hmm. I don't know. It's an interesting question to raise. Certainly, if I'm Cincinnati, I don't know what else you can do to really
I
improve.
I think the only thing you
Cut him.
can do is draft some competition early. Maybe surprise people, take a quarterback second, third round next year, and they gotta let Dalton know that time's running out. I mean, it really is.
Mm,
The defenses
Yeah,
that he's had the last few years, you kidding?
they've been very good,
hmm
and he's got two great running backs. He's got one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and some
Would
good
help.
and some good guys around AJ Green as well. I mean, Mohamed Sanu is no slouch. Um,
Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones, yes,
Yeah.
that's who I was thinking of. Is another guy he's pretty good. Andy Dalton has no excuses, and he just hasn't done it yet. So if and I don't think this is the year he's going to do it. So I
no.
think it might be time for them to move on if they can even move on.
Well, I don't think I don't think it would be time to move on. I was just thinking that it would be time to consider moving on if that hasn't already been done. I know there's a lot of unhappy Cincinnati fans. I think it's kind of a similar situation to Jay Cutler. I know that it's like they're penciled in as starters every week, no matter what, but you're just never satisfied with what happens.
Yeah, and it goes back to the idea of it's not like you can go cut him
No,
because the dead cap is going to be crazy, and you're not going to want to have to deal with that.
that's not a realistic option ever.
No, you're not going to cut him, and maybe if you find a trade partner, great, but that's going to be tough to do without probably having to give up some kind of other asset.
But we would all agree that the Bengals missed the playoffs this year. I would say.
But see,
Expect some moves.
and
Hey,
Christopher brings up a good point with, if you're trying to draft competition for him, why not AJ McCarron at least? I don't know if you're going to find somebody else better in the third or fourth round than AJ McCarron, at least this year.
mm,
So maybe and if AJ McCarron isn't the guy, I don't know, you might. So, and Cincinnati's kind of in the same boat as Buffalo because they're not going to be bad enough to get a high pick,
Right.
but they're not going to be good enough because Andy Dalton isn't good enough. So they are in some trouble themselves, I must say. But they're probably not as bad as Cleveland right now.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Let's talk about quarterback woes.
Yeah, they got some issues there. Johnny Manziel is their backup quarterback right now, which is saying a
Supposedly a
lot.
changed man, he
Which
says.
is which is saying a lot. That's a everybody's a changed man. Alden Smith was a changed man,
Right.
and look at that. So, but yeah, sorry. Let's go ahead and talk about some of their acquisitions this year and some of their losses. I kind of, diss the Browns a little bit, just poke fun at them. But I really actually don't think they're going to be that terrible this year. So they brought in Brian Hartline and Dwayne Bowe at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, let me just finish this list first, and then we can talk about Dwayne Bowe. They brought in Josh McCown, but okay, so those are their three bad acquisitions. So let's move on from them. They brought in Tremont Williams at corner, Randy Starks and Danny Shelton at defensive tackle, nose tackle, as well as Cam Irving and Duke Johnson at running back. And then as far as who they lost, Jordan Cameron at tight end, Buster Screen, and Atiba Rubin. So give me your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns this year. I don't think they're going to be as bad as some people think.
No, they're going to be as bad as what some people think.
How bad? Over under six
Elaborate.
wins.
Um, I mean, I give that a push. 6-10, maybe. Maybe that's like their best case scenario in my mind, 6-10, because they are in one of the toughest divisions in the league. Somebody's got to be losing to the other teams. I give it to the Browns. They just their acquisitions on defense have been I've liked the acquisitions they got, but on offense they just didn't bring in enough to sustain the excuse me, to sustain a good record, if you get what I'm trying to say. If Dwayne Bowe's number one receiver, you have a problem. I mean, look at what the Chiefs did last year. Receivers don't make an entire team, but when your number one guy is Dwayne Bowe, he's I can get into why I don't like Dwayne Bowe, and that could be a whole podcast unto itself. But anyway,
Well,
they're say that again.
they've got two of the most overrated wide receivers in the NFL on their roster right now, and Brian Hartline and Dwayne Bowe. They
Exactly.
are the epitome of well,
Overrated and overpaid.
yeah. I didn't want to go as far to say trash, but they're not good. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
They don't
And
deserve
who
to
do they
be.
have at running back? Who's their
Well,
number one running back right
I
now?
I kind of like their backfield here. They've got three young running backs, and they got Duke Johnson this year out of Miami, as well as
Oh
Isaiah
yeah. Oh, I
Crowell.
like that pick. I
As
just remembered who Duke Johnson was. Now that you
yeah,
said Miami, I was. He's actually uh, come to think of it, he was the guy who I could see being the most surprising running back out of the Lotto pick this last draft. And everybody's mocking me for it. I'm
well,
like, no, Duke Johnson's gonna be good.
I well
You just wait.
I agree with you there. He reminds me a lot of Lamar Miller out of Miami, but I think he's a little bit better. He needs to gain a little bit of muscle. He needs to become
Mhm.
a little bit more of a complete back, but he's got a lot of natural talent. He's quick, and he's just a flat out good running back. So he's going to be in the backfield as well as Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West. But so
But yeah, but the thing about those two is they trade off every week on which one of them's gonna be injured.
well, and they trade off and who's actually going to have a good week each week. You never
True.
really know what you're going to get with those two. So I, saying that, I think Cleveland is going to be a running team this year, especially with their offensive line.
Very good offensive line.
They've got a
They have
great
a
offensive
great
line,
offense.
and they've
Who's
got
their
a
that oh man, that tackle that's always been there.
Joe
Joe
Thomas.
Thomas from
Joe
Wisconsin.
Thomas, that's who.
Yeah. Um, and then they brought in Cam Irving. He might not even start this year. We'll see.
I think they move him to right guard to
Yeah,
play.
it just
If they
depends.
do that, then Batonio had a fantastic year last year.
Yeah.
Alex Mack deserved the money he got. Well, maybe, but that offensive line is great. The wide receiving talent we discussed is not good. They also don't have a tight end worth sniffing at all. And I want to touch on the defense right now. I like the Shelton pick and the Nate Orchard pick. I wasn't a fan of the Irving pick, and I don't understand. I know Devontae Parker had his foot issues, but I just don't understand why they passed on him. I feel, in my opinion, they should have picked him up to put him in at wide receiver to give some help to the offense. But one thing I just want to touch on is the pass rush. Cleveland has just about none. Markevius Mingo has been one of the biggest draft busts in recent years.
Hmm.
It's possible Paul Kruger is their best pass rusher,
Well,
and that's not good news.
and especially losing Jabal Sheard to New England.
Right.
So they're going to have trouble there. That is the weak spot on that defense right now. Yeah, but Cleveland's definitely going to have to do whatever it can to not let Josh McCown throw the football. It pretty much boils down to that. Their success ties to whether they can control the tempo of the game, play good defense, and run the football. They're going to be a very old school looking team this year. If Josh McCown can just like not throw three interceptions a game, they might win some games.
But here's the thing, that style of offense doesn't work in the NFL anymore. That's why nobody uses it.
Well,
Which is why it's going to lead to them struggling for a large portion of the season.
I don't know. I think that's unfair to say to a certain degree because you look at Dallas last year and they did the same thing and they
But they had DeMarco Murray.
I
That's the
know,
difference.
and that's what
And
I'm
they
gonna
had
say.
that amazing offensive line,
But the
It is.
Browns' offensive line is pretty good.
but
It's
they don't have
it's
DeMarco
it's
Murray.
they don't have DeMarco Murray, and that's where the difference is. That's why they're not going to go 12-4. For me,
They
at
also
least, I
don't
think.
have Des
That is not the
Bryant
only
taking.
reason they're not going 12-4.
Well, I know, but
It's also Cleveland. Let's not forget about that.
I'm just saying it can be done, and if you really commit to it, and the way that this team is built, they can win close football games. So feel like 6-10 or 7-9 is not. It's because you think 6-10 isn't really that terrible. When we're thinking of the Browns, we're thinking like 4-12 or 3-13. 6-10 or 7-9, and that division isn't. It's somewhat respectable. It's you're at least competitive.
I agree.
So
Hmm.
while we do dog the Browns,
I
eh, to a certain degree, okay, yeah. uh, I think they deserve at least some credit because they're an NFL team. They have NFL
So,
players.
so do the Jaguars.
Well, the Jaguars are another story in itself. They are well, they're not in the NFC North though. We'll leave that for another week. We'll talk about the
AFC.
awesome AFC South in a few weeks. I guess actually next week we'll be talking about the AFC South and just how awesome it is with the Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars.
For me, I think that the Browns finish 5-11, but I do agree that they'll be in some close games. I just am not convinced they're going to be able to pull them out.
Yep, that's fair to say. All right, so who do you guys think wins this division though? After it's
Ravens.
all said and done.
I think it goes Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Browns.
I'm going to go with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's gonna win it in a tiebreaker, and then Baltimore will be second, and then the Bengals and the Browns.
I feel like it's more likely the Steelers take 2 from Baltimore than Baltimore takes 2 from the Steelers.
I can see them splitting. That's the thing. That's
In
my
the end,
mindset
yeah,
right there.
I'd agree. I think they'd probably split. It's hard to see in that rivalry them, either team taking both games. But yeah, so we Justin, I think Steelers. Christopher thinks Ravens. We'll see. But that is
I
it
believe
for
in
us.
Joe Flacco.
Ooh, that's
In the playoffs, yes. In the regular season, not so much.
yeah. I'm not a Joe Flacco fan, but we'll refrain from getting into that discussion for now. We're just gonna focus on these teams here this week. So that pretty much wraps up our podcast for this week. Come back and check out for the rest of this series, guys. It's gonna be every week leading up to week 1 of the NFL season. This week we started with our first 2 divisions, some of the best divisions in the NFL. So thank you guys. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back next week with bigger and better things. Take it easy.